The second book's going to write itself, or Jason's going to write it for you.
That'll make life easier, won't it?
Hey everybody, it's John Lamerton here alongside my good friend and business partner, Mr. Jason Brockman. We are here for another episode of the Ambitious Lifestyle Business Podcast, where as always, it is our job to help you get more customers and make more money without just working harder. So without further ado, let's dive straight into this month's episode.
Today we are joined by Sarah Lamerton, who is a mother of 2 children with additional needs, a former teacher and home educator, who describes the flaws and challenges of a one-size-fits-all approach in the broken school system, resulting in children with additional needs being misunderstood and neglected by an outdated system. She's also my wife. You might recognise the surname.
You prepared that, didn't you?
I did. That's the most professional one I've done so far. It's a good job that I think I might have written this one for you, actually. It's on the back of your book. The book is How the School System Fails Children with Needs and What You Can Do About It by Sarah Lamerton. You're a repeat guest on the ALB podcast, your second appearance, ALB 79, episode 79. So last time we were talking about your first 18 months in business and leaving the teaching profession, starting your own tutoring business, and actually closing the doors to new business at that point because you'd got yourself completely full. How have things been since then? Say 4 years later, how has that business evolved?
Well, I followed the plan. So, well, it's still going well. Doors are still closed. I'm still full. And any remain, I've filled groups now rather than just individual places. So the tuition's going well, but so I released my book. And I want to pivot slightly in terms of how I support the parents as not just their children. So I'm moving into trying to pivot slightly and move into different things as well. But yeah.
We should have talked about this in 2021, because that pivot was the word of 2021, wasn't it? We all have to pivot. We all have to do things a little bit differently.
Yeah. I mean, I wrote a book because the school system annoyed me so much. As you know, it failed both of our children. And the thought, because I'm being a teacher, I just felt like, I would always remain in the school system teaching. But the sheer fact that there were several things that happened to both of our children that meant they couldn't be in the school system just made me reevaluate everything in terms of, is it a system I can work in? Can I remain in that system? Because if it's not serving my own children, then, what's going on? I wrestled with that for quite some time before eventually taking the plunge and starting up my own business. So with regards to starting up my own tuition business, that meant that then we could home educate both of our children at home rather than them be in school, which better met their needs. And it's kind of evolved from there, really, hasn't it? It's just, that I made the job serve me rather than me serve the job. So, yeah. And I followed your plan.
Well, I'm glad someone has. All these years now, we've been doing this, 9 years coming up for now. How many listeners we've got out there that do follow our plan? I don't know. There are some. I do hear from them. As we were chatting this morning, you have followed the plan because I think I write these books, but you're there throughout my writing process. So you know all the stories that are in there. I often talk through a lot of the frameworks. And as I was thinking through as it will be this summer, 5 books that I've released, every single one of them I can point to and say, Yep, Sarah's done something with that one. Sarah's taken that principle and absolutely run with it. So, go back to the very first book, Big Ideas for Small Businesses. You have created your own ambitious lifestyle business. Whether you've done it through that book or whether you've done it just through osmosis of, that book was me for the first
I think it's
10
all
years.
ingrained, to be honest, isn't it now? I mean, living together, I live and breathe your values as well as my own. But, probably a lot of it. I mean, yes, I have read all your books, but because it's good that what I'm going to say next is going to make it sound like I haven't, but I have. But I do live and breathe what you have said, and I ask you often for advice in terms of what I should be doing, and everything you're telling me is exactly what's in the books, isn't it? So
that is normally my advice: is just go and read the book.
Yeah,
just
it is.
Don't
now.
ask me. I've written a book, so you don't need to ask me. Just open it up, page 37. There you go. There's the answer to your question.
Yeah.
I find it really interesting, just to go back on your first point, actually, Sarah, where the reason for the book, the reason for what you end up doing is that the system's broken. And I resonate with that, the way you kind of said, actually, the schools are broken, and actually they've broken the children, and it hasn't looked after them, and it hasn't catered. It was exactly the same thing for me when I kind of left the health service and I trained as a nurse. And then actually that system was broken. I needed a gap from it. I needed a break from it. It just happened to last another 20 years after qualifying. But exactly that same thing. The system was broken. I mean, this is back in 1997. So we are heading back 35 years, 30 years coming up, is it? Yeah, 25 years, 30 years coming up. So it's like a long time, and actually nothing's changed, and nothing's been fixed, and nothing, it is as it always has been, and if not a little bit worse, I guess. But yeah, it's really interesting that actually that's the same reason you left. And to be fair, John left the civil service originally because actually that system was broken. Actually, he didn't enjoy what he was being asked to do for the reasons that he was asked to do it, because it just didn't make any sense. And all three of us are kind of left the system that was broken to do something different with ourselves and make that difference in different ways. Interesting.
It is interesting, and I think there are so many systems actually that are broken within this country, and I I know that's probably why you're thinking of moving, isn't it? But I think they're just missing the key points, aren't they? All the time with it. And I think that is the key bit for me, is that it doesn't fit people for today. Particularly with regard to the school system, it serves people from like the turn of the 1900s rather than the children we have in front of ourselves today. And actually, knowledge has moved on considerably in terms of how children learn. And, a lot's talked about behaviour in school and whatnot, but a child's or anybody's behaviour is as a result of the things that they're experiencing. And if you get that wrong, then yes, you're going to see different behaviours, potentially those that you don't want to see in that environment. But that just means it's a symptom, isn't it? It's, the environment that you're in doesn't meet your needs. And I think that's so true of, the National Health Service is exactly the same. It's not meeting the needs of people any longer. Hence why it's now broken. But I still don't think, even within schools, they're not, the things that they're talking about doing, the measures they're putting in place is punitive rather than supportive. And they're still not really grasping exactly what the issue is. I said it in my book, I say it in my posts. It's not rocket science, but, evidently it appears it is.
Well, it's. I think I said it to you the other day, wasn't it? It's just that you're just trying to change a system that's designed to control. And unfortunately, if they start losing control, they start beating you with a stick. We saw it in the summer with the riots. We've seen it. We see it in the schools with attendance. It's actually, well, let's make them do it. Let's fine parents. Let's hold them over the coals. Let's shame them into being in school. It's just when we start losing control as a society or as a government, then it's which is interesting, because we've just come out of a long period of over control in terms of COVID and staying at home and stuff. So it's really interesting that they've kind of decided now is the time to kind of to reinforce that control piece. Who knows? Anyway, that's probably a bit political for this conversation, isn't it?
Yeah, we don't do politics on this podcast. It's all right. Actually, I was listening to a podcast yesterday, and they did touch on politics. Now, it was more about what's broken in the investment sector of this country. But you can apply this to anything that's broken. They said, look, the problem is the people who have the power don't have the knowledge, and the people who have the knowledge don't have the power. it's another example they used was, the health service. They said, Wes Streeting. No one's expecting Wes Streeting to be able to do heart surgery. But why is he unable to pick his best team? Why can't he recruit the 5 best people in the world that he wants from anywhere in the world on any salary? And that's his top team. No, you've got to work with these civil servants. These are the people you got, and you can only pay X amount. Well, you're not going to get very good people for that, right? Well, that's what we've got. That's the system it is. It's like you're talking 5 people in a system of 200,000 people.
Especially when those 5 people have been in the civil service for the last 30, 40 years.
Yeah.
Therefore,
And we've always done it this way.
They haven't moved forward, and they experienced the Victorian education, and that's where that's how we did it. Look how we've turned out. We've turned out all right. So let's keep it going.
Have they really, though? Just put it out there. But yeah.
So along comes the idea for the book. I mean, that was a little while ago, I think, Sarah, wasn't it?
Yeah, it took me a few years to write because I was working alongside and home educating. So it did take 4 years to write. It was released in January. So that's going well at the minute. And I'm going to use it as an evergreen asset. And along with my ding the bell, John. It's routine. I
haven't got an evergreen bell. I've got the routine bell. There you go. So you mentioned crafting the environment just now. That's routine machine. We've covered off big ideas. You're creating evergreen assets. I don't know. Can we have like a lumberjack saw or something for a tree?
I just think we need a bullshit bingo ding dong thing. There's another one.
So I will use that as an evergreen asset. The idea is to filter in through into my emails, where I will be giving tips and advice to parents who the idea was to bridge the gap between school and home, school and parents, because I just feel it is a tricky system to navigate and make sure you get exactly what you need in place. Even as a teacher, I still don't manage to get everything, although I'm pretty good at getting what I need in place. I still don't manage to get the answers that I want to have, or that should the things that should happen in place all the time. So it is tricky to navigate. So my idea was, and also then if you've got no idea about the school system and how it works, you're kind of very much at sea in terms of what can you ask for, what can you expect to be put in place. How do you know if you're being fobbed off by a school or by the system?
Just their lips are moving.
Well, but not all of them are like that either. Some schools genuinely do try really hard. I mean, we have that with our daughter's school. They have been absolutely incredible since she started secondary school, and they are a yes school in terms of they see the child, and that is part of their ethos. They look at the whole child, not just the academic side of things, not just the data side of things. Whereas a lot of schools, I found, their top priority is the data and how they can, improve that data. So children are then just a statistic rather than an individual, whose needs need to be met. So my idea really is to support parents, and I do that within the tuition side of things. So quite often my lesson will have ended and John will be like, tea's on the table, and I'm like, I'm still outside talking to a parent because they need, they've asked for help in terms of the school isn't doing this, and what do I need to do, and how do I tackle that? So the idea originally came from that because I was already doing it. John was like, you should be getting paid for that, really, rather than just giving it all away for free. So the idea has come from that, but also I feel that further forward as I get older, I probably won't want to do as many lessons and work as many hours as I am with the tuition. So it was where do I go next, really? And I feel bridging the gap, is very much needed as well at the minute. So it's a bit of a gap in where parents and schools are. I mean,
it's
I like helping people.
Control things, isn't it? That you've got control. If you don't know anything,
Exactly.
you haven't got the knowledge, then you don't have the control, do you? And that's
exactly.
That's the things that kind of schools do, really. They divide and conquer very well, so you don't tend to know what everybody else who's in the same situation you is able to get or able to do. They just keep things separately. Writing the book must have been so easy. Well, actually, easy and difficult.
It was therapy.
Really easy to get down all that anger and all of those situations where you feel really frustrated. And I bet that was the easy part to write. But that's not what the book is about. It's not a, however many pages, 200 odd page rant, is it? It's actually,
no.
It's got some real good stories in there of your experiences.
And real stories too.
Sorry?
Not just my stories, but other people's stories as well. But real stories. None of it was made up, so it's all it's all true.
Yeah. But you then go on to how this can be helped and how you can, as a parent, get some help and what you need to kind of do. But I think teachers should need to read too, because actually they don't understand that impact that those words have on the child, albeit so small and so diminished and so whatever. They just don't understand. And actually just reading some of the stories that are in there would actually really help those too. So, as I say, writing down the ranting stuff must have been really easy. So I bet you've done that in the first 3 days.
Therapeutic, yeah. Well, it seemed to progress over the 4 years because there was always something new to write about. There was always a new thing that I was just like, oh, that's really got my goat, so I'm going to write that down.
So this is volume 1 then, is it? Is there another 10 volumes to come?
My next idea was to follow up this book with a second book that delved much deeper into what you can do about it. And I went to dinner with a friend the other week who suggested that potentially maybe a second book wasn't the right idea, but maybe I should create a podcast. So I have I'm in the process of creating my own podcast with a fellow home educator who has had very similar experiences to me with her sons in the education system. And so together we've started the podcast, which is called Beyond the School Gates. And we're going to talk about the school system, the home education side of things, all the bits in between. And how it affects children, how it causes trauma, how you can recover from that. So that's going to be, it's a free thing too. So have you noticed that with me? All the things that I get really passionate about are always the free things. So I am feeling really passionate and good about that, because I think the stories, hearing other people as a parent, it can feel really lonely, can't it? In terms of, if you're not getting that support, you can feel very isolated in not knowing what to do and what to do for the best. So hopefully that will give parents someone else to listen to and shared stories and things. So we're currently underway with recording series 1. We've recorded 3 episodes so far, so the next one will be this week. And hopefully we'll be able to interview people as well with their stories to share as well. So, yeah.
What's the podcast called?
Beyond the School Gates.
Available wherever you get your podcasts.
It will be. Yes, it will be. We're going to drip feed them out one a week, but we thought we'd get underway with the recording first and then launch it. But yeah. So I think
the first one will be out before this is out, so everyone listening to this particular podcast will be able to go and find it easily, I'm sure.
Oh, well, go and... Are you holding me to this, Jason? Yeah, see, I knew. Accountability gets in there as well.
I was going to say, that was the thing that I think you started taking up your one-to-ones with me on a Thursday, and I think the book progressed quicker when you had a bit of accountability.
I know when I need it. I know when I need that accountability. The writing bit, like you say, that went really well, and I was moving along with that. It was the bits that I didn't like so much at the very end in terms of the editing and that side of things. And editing. And I needed the accountability for that. I'm quite good at motivating myself, but that last bit was a bit of I needed a push. But yeah.
So is that now where we need to push you next? Because you said you like doing the free stuff, and you've got that very clear, and I love this very clear North Star, that despite your business being you and just you, and there's not going to be a team of employees and and scaling that here. But despite that, you want to take on the man. You want to take on the school system. And that's a proper David versus Goliath thing. But actually, you've got that's such a driving force of that North Star that you know what you want. You know why you're doing this. That makes everything easier. But we need to balance that with you not burning out by you giving everything for free. And I know there'll be a lot of listeners listening to this who will really resonate with that because they are very passionate about what they do. We often talk about a hedgehog. Our next episode coming up, we're going to be talking deep diving into the hedgehog again. What are you passionate about? What are you good at? What is the world willing to reward you handsomely for? And you've got to have all three, because if you're just really good at it and you're really passionate about it, but there's no money in it, you are going to burn out at some point.
Yeah. Yes. Well, I've always been really passionate about supporting and helping the underdog, in terms of those who can't do it for themselves. I just feel it just makes it such an unlevel playing field, and I just think that's really unfair. And particularly, when we're talking about children and the fact that they don't have that voice yet, it's really difficult for a child to speak up to an adult and say, hang on a minute, that's not right. It doesn't really happen, does it? And they're not allowed to speak up in secondary school. And I just, it just really grates on me. It's so wrong. It just really riles me up. So that's what I want to do. I want to support parents in helping their children to battle the system so that they can get what's in, what should be rightfully in place. We're not talking about anything that, is more than what they should get. We're just talking about literally what they should have, and knowing about that. And I think that's the key thing, isn't it? Is knowing how to do these things and knowing what is available. And schools don't tend to readily make that available because obviously some things cost money, some things take time, and they don't tend to advertise those things. So, so that's where I want to go. So I shall be reevaluating my hedgehog. I usually do these things when we're sat somewhere on holiday, don't I, John? So, next holiday, which I shall be sat.
News. 2 weeks to your next holiday.
I know, right? A new plan's coming together. So,
So the thing that I really like, and the two things I get from taking out what John was just saying as well, is that you love to give, you don't like to charge, and there's a whole load of people out there that can't get into your classroom that you've got at home. So the fact you've got a podcast coming out, you've written a book, there's another book in the offing, potentially, it's the way that you get to the masses, that you can open their eyes, that you can show them. Being that expert in the field, getting yourself into some of the press, some of the TV, some of the radio, wherever that may be, just giving that story, opening people's eyes as to actually, when the school says your son was not behaved today, that is not necessarily true. That is actually this. If this is something that's consistent over a period of time, where at home your son isn't bad, and in school they're telling you that he's awful, that isn't the case. Actually, there's something that's missing. There's something that's not quite right there, and it's time to kind of actually just look past the headlines that the school are giving you and look at what that detail needs to be. That's definitely my experience of the school system. With my offspring, is that actually on the times where the school have come back and it's been a terrible day again today, this has gone wrong, that's gone wrong, that's gone wrong. And it's like, but this isn't my son, this isn't what it's about. And actually, then you just get the headlines, and because the school are telling you, you just go, okay, well, that's really bad, isn't it? I'm sorry, well, tomorrow's a new day, let's try again, kind of thing. And, before you realise it, actually, no, there's something else adrift here. And it is, attitudes and behaviour of adults that are due to give care for the person they're looking after that's failing, and not the young person. But sorry, there's me going back into a rant.
No, that's all right.
The second book is going to write itself.
Say again?
The second book's going to write itself, or Jason's going to write it for you.
That'll make life easier, won't it?
Yeah. Yeah. No, it's just interesting. But then that messaging that you can put out all over the place, the more people hear that messaging, the more people go, oh, that's right. Oh, well, actually, I can challenge, or I can ask the question, or I can look behind the headline, or I can ask for something simple that the school can do. Those reasonable adjustments that the school are duty bound to make, yet don't tell you what they are. It's just interesting, but just being able to share that and explain on a larger platform. Books, white papers, whatever it is that you
I think that's where I need to go next, really, is the larger platform. So yes, I shall look for opportunities for that. I think initially I was thinking that I would do sort of one-to-one support for parents. Now I'm kind of feeling that that's still going to be quite narrow field, really, because time-wise there's only so many hours in a day and a week. So now I'm feeling like actually maybe a course would be better. So planning the support through maybe a 6-week thing or something, so that can be one-to-many, and then that will also be an evergreen asset then going forward. So once I've made it, it's done, isn't it? So that's in my sort of slightly longer term goals, I think.
And crafting a community.
To do that. Yeah.
Community was the one I was thinking of there. I think we will have some discussions, I'm sure, on our Easter holiday. It's for me again. You working through the books 2 years ago, the false exit was coming out, and suddenly we started talking about, well, what does life look like in a few years' time when you don't want to do as much live work, and maybe you don't want to be tied to having to be in this country during term time, which I know we have for the duration that we've known each other, because you've always been a bloody teacher, and we've always had to pay 40% more for our holidays than anyone else, because that's when the school holidays are.
Not anyone else, everyone else.
But yeah, it's you've now kind of looked at that and said, okay, what would a false exit look like for you? Because this isn't a business that you would sell and exit.
No.
But it is a business that can evolve, and it's not something where you need to say, I'm retiring, I'm stopping doing, teaching the kids in the classroom, because I know that is something that you love doing. I know it's something, but you may not enjoy doing that 4 hours a day, 5 days a week, every week. And when it's the middle of January and it's horrible outside, and you're like, oh great, we've got to be in Plymouth because I've got students coming.
Be honest, I mean, I teach online as well, so to be fair, if necessary, I could probably take that anywhere. My lessons could go online. So I have thought in terms of further ahead as to the things I could do, and I think there would probably be a transition period in terms of easing it back a bit on the teaching whilst ramping up something else. So I think there's going to be I'm looking at a bit more longer term, really. At the moment, I'm quite happy with the tuition and getting the book out there. But I think the next step really will be to launch a course or something that gives me that additional income to enable me to back off a little bit on the tuition. But I just got to get over the whole thing of I still really enjoy that. So maybe there'll be a bit in between where I can say, look, I'm going to be away at these times, so there won't be any lessons at that point. And because I can teach whenever across the school year, so can't I, if it's not in a school? So, I make it work for me rather than me work for it. So
I think
and that's been my thing all the way through, hasn't it, really?
Yeah. When I put Evergreen Assets out, I had a lot of people, a lot of freelancers, but a lot of solopreneurs as well. Just that argument of, well, I want to invest in these evergreen assets. I want to have the evergreen assets, but in order for me to create them, I need to turn away paid work. I need to stop doing the live work to generate the revenue from the evergreen asset. But how do I do that? Because I need to do the live work, and it is that chicken and egg in some way that you've got to carve out some time to invest in your first evergreen asset, which then will throw off some revenue that will enable you to carve out some more time. And you used the word pivot earlier, but for me, a pivot is a turning on a dime. It's doing an about turn. this is about evolving. This is about saying, what does your life look like in 5 years' time, 10 years' time? Okay, how do we take the first step towards that? How do we just, you've done that already. You've created the book. The book is your first evergreen asset. It's a very, very big evergreen asset. So now let's add another one. This quarter, this next 6 months, this next year, let's add one more. But maybe that's a course. We mentioned community. Yeah. Maybe that's next year that you add a community. Maybe you then dial back your lessons. So if you've got I'll make the numbers up here, but let's say you've got 50 kids. Next year it's 45. And we just ease it back. You don't need to say, I've got 50 kids this year and none next year. It can be, let's ease it back. Let's finish an hour earlier. And I know you've kept your Thursdays free for book writing. Let's keep Thursdays free. That's evergreen day. On Thursdays, I don't do any live work, time for money. I just create evergreen assets. And if you can protect that time, that's almost like a routine.
It is a routine.
You've got one working there that actually 5 years from now, that 1 day a week means that you can still only do one, you can still only, create 1 day a week, creating evergreen assets, but you don't need to work live at all, maybe. And the live work you do is just cherry picking the very best ones that you do, the ones that are absolutely, that's my dream client. That's who I love working for. There's none of this. We've had a few. You get too many now. But we've had a few. It's like, why am I teaching this child? This child is, I don't know why they're coming. I don't know why I teach them. Why are they still here? We don't get many of them now. I think when you first started, it was just like, oh, child. Yes, I can teach a child. Brilliant. Come on in. And now you're very clear on who you help and how you help them.
Yeah. And if it doesn't match that, if it's not a good match to start off with, so I always meet with parents to make sure that what they value is in line with what I value. And if it's not aligned, then I'm full.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah. But it's got to be right as
well. 5 year plan, Sarah. I'm just thinking ahead or where you want to go with this. Obviously, making that difference in lots of parents, schools, education system. What would your dream be? Would it be a one-to-one with the education secretary or prime minister, or would that be a thing? Would you want to be on a panel with the education board? Would you want to join Ofsted, or would you want to?
No.
I'm leaving you up to get some reaction here.
Actually, maybe that wouldn't be a bad thing, because I would completely change that on its head, Ofsted. I don't rate it at all the way it is, and I don't think even the changes are going far enough. So maybe that wouldn't be a bad thing, but it's not really where I saw myself going.
Yeah, what would that dream piece be? If in the next 12 months, you could.
I don't know. I hadn't really thought about it in terms of where that, in terms of meeting or talking to other people.
Well, Sarah, just interrupt there, because you've sent copies of this book to MPs, local MPs and MPs within the education system. And you told me 4 days ago, that your book is being used as reference material for a debate in the House of Commons.
I did, yes.
There you go. So you're making impact already.
Well, it was Rebecca who said it, so I'd say it's real. It was on her list of reading material for the debate for the Wellbeing and Education Bill. Yeah, I mean, a conversation would be good, wouldn't it, with somebody in charge? Because I just feel that they're not really, I don't know, they've just not got the right message. They just haven't got it right.
So what does that look now? So if we reverse engineer that, what does that then look like? What do you need to do? What steps do you need to take on your Thursdays in order to be able to get to a situation where, hi, Bridge, I need a chat. Bridget, not Nielsen. Bridget
Phillipson.
That's the one. The education. current education secretary, who
I
may well be
love where
listening.
you added the word current. We've got a couple of weeks before this podcast comes out, so who knows? There was a period at one point we couldn't even guess who the Prime Minister was going to be by the time the podcast episode came out.
That is true. So yeah, Bridget Phillipson, who will be listening to our podcast, no doubt, and Sarah would love to have a conversation with you. But in the meantime, she might have to do a bit of work in order to get you to know who she is. So
I've tagged her in various posts and things and not had any responses. So, obviously I need to work a bit harder at this.
Yeah, but the trouble is, people who see those posts and the tags isn't her. That's her civil servants. And those are the people who won't do the change. So therefore, they won't show anything that you might tag her in, unfortunately. Not beasting up the civil service or certainly those in Whitehall. But I feel that they're the ones who need to do the bit of changing. So who is the civil servant who's in charge of the Department of Education? Maybe that's the person to start with.
Yeah, maybe I'll send them a copy of my book and then ask them for a chat about it afterwards.
Yes.
It's making lots of noise, isn't it? Let's say
it is.
Get on podcasts, if you can get in the media, just bang that drum. And that, your key message, I mean, the title of the book, again, How the School System Fails Children with Needs, what you can do about it. So your message is the school system fails children with needs. And here's what you need. Here's what we need to do about it. That is that consistent message that if you keep banging that drum that the school system fails children with needs, people will rally behind you. People will agree, yes, it does. And I can introduce you to someone who can introduce you to someone who knows. An undersecretary somewhere, and you will get help, you will get support, because you'll build your tribe. And that's why I think community is a good one, because that community is a bunch of people who all believe that same thing and all want the school system to change and are all invested in helping you achieve that. You are the flag bearer, if you like. You are the public face of it, but they will be behind you. It's your team behind you.
Yeah. I know there's a lot of people that comment, and feel it as passionately as I do already in terms of parents commenting on posts on Facebook and things. So that is beginning. I think it just takes a while to get going, doesn't it?
Yeah.
And I think really interestingly that the first solution that you have in your book isn't directed at children with needs. It's the whole school system. It's the education of our children is not fit for purpose. Not whether there's special needs involved at all. It is the whole lot. We're not teaching kids for the 21st century that we're in. No. We're not teaching them for the future. The education that they're getting is the same as educated 100 years ago. There's no change in that. There's no bringing that up to date. We're not Googling anything in the classroom. No. That was a great
I remember I had a conversation with a teacher, and this is going back probably 15 years now, and she said to me, we're preparing children for jobs that don't exist yet. So that's what we need to consider when we're teaching them the skills and things in school. I don't think that's actually changed. Nothing has changed in those 15 years in terms of we're still preparing them for jobs that aren't around yet, but we've not actually evolved in terms of what we're teaching them.
Yeah. I was working through, so our eldest is 16 this summer, looking at he was doing work experience and looking at doing an apprenticeship. I was using ChatGPT to help him with his CV, his covering letter, any applications, based on his experience, predicted grades, everything like that. And I said to him, what have school taught you about how to use ChatGPT? He said, the only advice they've given is don't use it. Like, that's it. Just don't use AI. Head in the sand, pretend it doesn't exist, because, children are going to cheat on their coursework. They're going to cheat on their homework. They're going to cheat on their exams if they use AI.
Why don't we teach them to use it responsibly instead?
Exactly. Exactly. What happens when they get it in the real world and the employer say, right, if you can use ChatGPT to do this, please. No, you're not allowed to do that. That's cheating. Like, no, it's not. It is like I say, it's the Googling of 20 years ago, isn't it? It's like, actually, you can tell kids not to Google stuff, or you can ask them to Google it and say, show me how you found this answer. Show me what research you did. Show me how you Googled it. Show me the prompts that you used on AI to generate this work. And unfortunately, they're not preparing kids for that. When Jack went into secondary school, I was really impressed because they gave everyone a copy of a Matthew Syed book, You Are Awesome, all about positive mindset, growth mindset. I thought, oh, this is brilliant. And it was just a token thing because they don't actually live and breathe it at all. They just give that book out and then ignore every bloody word in it.
So does every other secondary school, though. That there's. I think they just give it out as standard, don't they?
Yeah. Oh, we've done that. Check.
Yeah.
We have our vision and values. They're on the walls in the school.
Yeah, we painted them on the walls.
We don't breathe them and live them and follow any of them. Oh dear. Sarah, it's been lovely to have you on this episode of the podcast. We always ask our guests a question at the end, or at least I always ask the guests a question at the end. And this is the Ambitious Lifestyle Business Podcast. What does an ambitious lifestyle business look like for you?
I have it written down. So I don't forget.
Typical teacher, done her homework.
Yeah. So for me, it's not having a job that I work for, but having one that works for me. So it's got to work with regards to real life and the messiness of that, and it needs to adapt and adjust for me rather than me having to do all the giving, working for somebody else.
Nice, perfect. Thank you. Well, thank you for joining us.
Thank you for having me.
Yeah, thank you for coming back. Might be welcome back again.
But when booked,
maybe.
Maybe.
Yeah, maybe when booked. Yeah, or maybe when I've met with somebody and have something to report back on.
Yeah, please welcome the Education Secretary, Sarah Lamerton.
Love it.
I don't want that job. I'll tell him how to do it, but I don't want the job.
Yeah. Sounds good to me. Cool. Thank you, everybody, for joining us. As always, we shall see you next month for another edition of the Ambitious Lifestyle Business Podcast. See you later.
So there we are, another episode in the can. How was it for you? Please let us know. However you listen to these podcasts, please leave a review on that platform. Let us know what we can do better, what you like, what you don't like, and how we can improve to make this show even better for you. We'll see you next time.